Have you ever been in the middle of speaking, sharing something that truly mattered to you, and suddenly someone cuts you off? It happens in meetings. It happens with friends. It even happens in the most intimate moments when the person you love interrupts you. And here's the real question. How do you react? Do you go silent, shrinking back into the background? Do you smile awkwardly and whisper the words, "Sorry, go ahead"? It feels harmless, but it isn't. Because every time you surrender that moment, you are teaching the world how much or how little your voice deserves to be heard. And here's the truth. This is not just about interruptions. It's about power, about presence, about respect. Today, I'll show you something timeless, just 3 simple words that can stop interruptions in their tracks. 3 words once practiced by Marcus Aurelius, by Seneca, by Epictetus. Words so deceptively simple, yet so powerful that they can silence a room and draw every eye back to you. So stay with me until the end, because once you learn these words, you'll never struggle to be heard again. And if you believe in mastering yourself, in becoming unshakable in a noisy world, then take a moment, right now, to subscribe. This channel, The Stoic Habit, is where we grow stronger together. What are these 3 words? We'll begin with the very first one, but before we do, let's understand why language itself has always been tied to power in Stoic philosophy. Part 1. Words and power. The ancients knew this truth well. The Romans believed that words could shape an empire. One promise could spark a war. One command spoken at the right time could save thousands of lives. Seneca wrote to Lucilius, "Brevity and calm in speech carry more force than the loudest cries of the crowd." Not volume, not noise, but calm authority. And it's still true today. Power no longer rests in swords or shields. It rests in how you speak. In a meeting, if you can't hold attention, you'll be ignored. In a negotiation, if you can't defend your words, you'll be dismissed. Even in relationships, if you can't steady your voice, you'll be overlooked. Here's the problem: most of us give our power away. We smile awkwardly. We whisper, "Sorry." We yield. And in that moment we send a dangerous message. My voice matters less than yours. Marcus Aurelius warned himself daily, "Do not be distracted by what is unnecessary. Hold to what is essential." If you don't guard what is essential in your own words, others will take it from you. So how do you reclaim attention? Without shouting, without anger. Let's start with the first word, a word so simple that many people take it for granted. Part 2. The first word, listen. Why is this word so powerful? Psychologists call it an orienting signal. When you say listen, the human brain is instantly reprogrammed to stop, to focus, to prepare for something that matters. Picture this. You're in a meeting, the room buzzing with arguments, voices competing for dominance. You don't raise your voice. You don't slam the table. You simply say, "Listen, here's what needs to be finished first." The noise fades. The room falls still. Not because you threatened anyone, but because the word listen carries weight. It's a gentle command, one that our instincts are wired to obey. History gives us proof. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher, was known to pause mid-lesson when his students grew restless. He wouldn't scold them. He wouldn't shout. He would simply scan the room, lift his gaze, and say slowly, "Listen." And in that single word order was restored. Silence became his ally. Centuries later, Martin Luther King Jr. echoed the same principle. In his legendary "I Have a Dream" speech, he often began with the phrase, "Now listen." Thousands of people chanting, clapping, shouting, yet at those words, they leaned in. The crowd surrendered its noise to the gravity of his voice. That's the lesson. When you use listen, you remind others that your words carry value. You're not asking permission, you are declaring presence. But listening alone is not enough. Attention fades quickly unless it's anchored to meaning. You must show people why they should care, why your words deserve priority. That's where the second word enters, and it will shift the hierarchy of any conversation. Part 3. The second word, important. Interruptions happen because people believe their thoughts matter more than yours. They assume what they have to say is urgent, while what you're saying can wait. But the moment you use the word important, that assumption collapses. You shift the hierarchy of the conversation. You create weight, and the brain responds. Neuroscience shows that when something is labeled as important, the mind prioritizes it. Attention sharpens, focus deepens. Picture this scene. You're presenting an idea, and someone cuts in. Instead of fading, you say calmly, "The important point is this." Instantly, the interruption loses force. Nobody wants to be the fool who ignores what's important. The Stoics understood this long ago. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Hold to what is necessary. Do not be distracted by what does not matter." On the battlefield, surrounded by advisors, Marcus was said to raise his hand and declare, "The important matter is the discipline of the soldiers." With those words, endless chatter fell away, and all attention returned to the heart of the issue. In our daily lives, this can sound like, "What's important here is that I explain the reason first," or, "The important detail I was about to add changes everything." Notice what happens. You are no longer competing for attention. You are defining where attention belongs. But here's the catch: importance alone can feel abstract. People might nod and still drift away. To truly command presence, you must root importance in time, make it immediate. That's why the third word matters most. And it's the word that brings every wandering mind back to the present moment. Part 4. The third word, now. Later is easy to ignore. Tomorrow can be postponed. But now cannot be brushed aside. When you say, now, you anchor attention in the only moment that truly exists. Seneca wrote, "Life is divided into 3 parts, what was, what will be, and what island. We are not masters of the first 2, but only the third." The Stoics believed the present is our only possession. That's why the word now is so powerful. It doesn't allow distraction, it demands presence. Imagine this. You're interrupted mid-thought. Instead of backing away, you say, "Now, let me finish this." The other person halts, because now isn't optional. It forces them back into the moment with you. History gives us vivid examples. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, would stop debates and remind his students, now is the time to practice philosophy, not tomorrow. By using now, he refused to let wisdom drift into the abstract future. He pulled everyone back into reality. Even in modern life, leaders, coaches, and commanders rely on it. A general doesn't say, soon. He says, now. A coach doesn't shout later. He demands focus now. Because urgency commands action. So when you say, now, hear the rest of my point, or, now, focus on this part, you're not fighting interruptions, you're replacing their momentum with your own. Short, sharp, undeniable. With listen, you gain attention. With important, you define priority. With now, you root it in the present. But knowing these words isn't enough. There's a trap most people fall into, a single habit that destroys all authority the moment they open their mouth. And that trap is the word sorry. Part 5. The trap of sorry. Think about how many times you've done this. You're interrupted, and almost without thinking, you whisper, sorry, go ahead. It feels polite. It feels safe. But beneath the surface it is devastating. Because every time you use sorry in that moment, you are not just apologizing. You are asking permission to exist in the conversation. You are teaching the other person that their words deserve space, while yours can be brushed aside. Epictetus warned, no one can diminish you without your consent. And when you surrender with sorry, you are giving that consent away. Picture it, and in a meeting, your idea is cut off. You reply, "Sorry, continue." In that instant, your influence vanishes. The room no longer sees you as the one holding value. They see you as background noise. Or at home, you share something close to your heart. Your partner interrupts, and you answer, "Sorry, please finish." You've just told them, "My feelings matter less." Do this often enough, and people will believe it. They'll keep stepping over your voice, not because they're cruel, but because you've trained them to. The Stoics understood that authority isn't forced, it is embodied. Seneca reminded us that calm brevity persuades more deeply than anger, but calm authority is not the same as surrender. So the real danger of sorry is not weakness in a single moment. It's the slow erosion of your presence over time. Which raises the question, if sorry is the trap, what is the alternative? There is one phrase, just as short, just as simple, but instead of shrinking your voice, it expands it. And that phrase is, "Listen, there's more." Part 6. The alternative, listen, there's more. So if sorry is the trap, what's the way out? It comes down to a single phrase. Short, clear, powerful. Listen, there's more. Imagine you're in a meeting. You share an idea, then someone cuts in. Most people would shrink back, but instead you lift your eyes, steady your tone, and say, "Listen, there's more." Suddenly the interruption loses momentum. Your colleague pauses. Why? Because you've just declared that the thought isn't finished. And not only that, it carries weight. Picture it in your relationships. You open your heart. A friend interrupts with their own story. Instead of fading into the background, you lean slightly forward and say, "Listen, there's more." The effect is subtle but profound. You've reminded them that your voice is not noise. It is substance. And people don't interrupt substance, they lean in. Even in marriage, in the most familiar routines, this phrase can reshape habits. Partners often interrupt each other out of comfort, not malice. But if you always meet that with, "Sorry," the habit grows. If instead you answer, "Listen, there's more," you reclaim space without hostility. The Stoics would call this discipline of speech. Epictetus taught that silence is mastery, but also the ability to direct silence. When you say, "Listen, there's more," you direct silence back to yourself. You reclaim the moment with calm authority. This is not about arrogance. It's about presence. Sorry makes your words sound like noise. Listen, there's more makes them sound like truth. And here's the greater lesson. These words are not just conversation tactics. They are reflections of how you see yourself. Part 7. The Stoic Lesson. At the heart of Stoicism is this truth. Your words are not separate from your character. The way you speak reveals the way you see yourself. Epictetus reminded his students discipline of speech reflects discipline of thought. Seneca wrote, "Brevity holds more power than volume." Marcus Aurelius warned, "Waste no words on what is unnecessary." When you use listen, you claim attention. When you use important, you define priority. When you use now, you anchor presence. And when you replace sorry with listen, there's more, you stop surrendering your authority. This isn't about manipulation. It's about integrity. It's about living in a way that commands respect without ever needing to demand it. Because the one who embodies respect never has to ask for it. They carry it wherever they go. So remember these words, practice them, let them reshape the way you speak and the way others listen. And if you're ready to strengthen not just your words, but your entire way of living, subscribe to The Stoic Habit. Together, we walk the path of calm authority. Together, we learn to live unshakable. If this video brought you value, you can tap the Thanks button to support me in creating much more valuable content. Thanks for listening.